Welcome to an Esri Chest Steering Group extended webinar. Today you've got me, Addy Pope, and I'm joined by Sam Yates, who has just put our camera on just now. And we're going to take you through a range of things. Here's the agenda for today. There's going to be, the first part's going to be looking at the changes coming to the education site licenses for the next agreement, which starts next year. Then Sam's going to take us through a brief overview of some of the cool things that have come out in the ArcGIS system in the last 12 months-ish, and pointing you at some really useful resources. I've got a little bit about continuing professional development course for lecturers, which might be of interest to some of you. And then I'd like us to spend a couple of minutes thinking about the cadence of these webinars and the content of these webinars to make them as useful as possible for you. And then we will have time for questions. And on that, how do you ask questions? Well, we're not going to do it through GoToWebinar. It's easier for us to manage through Slido. There's a QR code there, which you can scan on your phone. If not, go to www.slido.com and enter hashtag Esri2110, which is today's date. For those of you that haven't already realized, that's our code. And then you'll be able to ask questions, and we'll come to all the questions at the end. Now, if you are asking a question, have a quick scan. Somebody might have already asked a very similar question, and if they have and you like it, give it a thumbs up. We will run through the questions in the order of popularity. We will get through them all, I hope. But if you see a question and you like it, give it a thumbs up, and that will give us an indication of which ones to address first. So, changes to the education site license for the next agreement. So I'd like to cover that this is just for higher education, higher and further education. We're not going to talk about schools. This isn't the audience for that. What we're going to cover is the education site license agreement and departmental licenses. And these changes are coming into effect at the end of the current agreement, which is the 31st of July 2026. And the new agreement will run from the 1st of August 26 through to the 31st of July 2029. I can't believe that I nearly wrote 2030, and that's a date which is only 3 years away or 4 years away. I still think it's 2005 in my head at times. So before I go into looking at what's going to be in the agreement, I thought it would be useful to remind you about what is not in the agreement. So there will be no provision of ArcMap in the next agreement. That died on the 1st of August 2024, although some licenses were then available. There will also be no ESU, so that's single use, or the EFL, the flex license codes, in the next agreement. They were also scheduled to be removed from your accounts on the 31st of July 2024. Esri allowed a grace period. Not everybody was quite ready for that. That was the deadline they gave us. We worked hard to support you to be able to move to the named users and that license model, but those licenses have been there just in case you needed them. They will be not there as of the 1st of August 2026. So you will have to use named users, except where you have a true air gap deployment environment. For those edge cases, and we're talking very few, you contact us and then we put a case together, and Esri Inc. will decide who does and doesn't get them and whether there is a workaround. Often there is a workaround, but in some cases there is not. A true air gap, a secure data environment would need to have a different licensing method, and named user would not be appropriate. So that's what's not going to be there. Let's move on to what is going to be there. So hopefully this table, and there will be a recording of this and you'll get the slides as well. So don't feel that you have to write everything down that you see. You will get these slides. The the new allocations are still going to have a small, a medium, and a large. They're still super generous, but they're not unlimited in the same way that they were unlimited before. I think we gave you 5,000 licenses and we would increase it if you hit that limit, and only a couple of universities did. But the proposal is now to have it tiered properly. Small getting 2,500, medium getting 5,000 users, and large getting 15,000. And those are the Pro Plus users. So that Pro Plus user gets ArcGIS Pro and all of the extensions, ArcGIS Online, and all of the functionality that comes with that. You're also going to get viewer licenses, which will be really useful if you've got external stakeholders who want to have a look at some students' work. Perhaps they work in a consultancy and they're doing a bit of collaborative work on a project, and you'll be able to give access to those external people, and that will give them view access to limited amounts of data. The credits as well are coming down from 5 million down to these tiered levels. So going from 1 million for the large institution down to 250,000 for the small. We've only actually had a couple of institutions which have used 5 million credits, and in both cases, they probably shouldn't have. One was an accounting error, probably on Esri Inc.'s part, and those credits have been recharged to the user. And the other one was the user actually could have run something in a different way and probably didn't understand quite what they were doing. These limits will help safeguard you against those things, but they are smaller. Then I've included a very, very high-level summary of what's included in that Professional Plus user type. So we're talking about the online apps, Hub Premium, Pro Extensions, Enterprise is still there, ArcGIS Monitor, All Source, Drone to Map Standard. These are the things that we've been told are in the license agreement. And the site license bands, the site licenses will still be streamed by the institution's JISC band. So hopefully that makes sense on that slide, and I'm sure there'll be some questions about this that we'll come to, but I'll move on to the departmental license, which is still going to be a 50 user pack. So for an institution that perhaps doesn't have a lot of teaching but has a research remit, no viewers on that one, 12,500 credits, and they get access to ArcGIS Pro, the extensions, and ArcGIS Online and all associated apps. So you'll see it's a much smaller offering than the site licenses. Within each of the site licenses, there will still be a fair allocation for administrative use, and that administrative use is generally estates and facilities, but also perhaps admission teams. We've got a couple of universities that are actively using ArcGIS Online to investigate where they get students from and whether or not they have diversity and inclusion baked into their student cohort, and where they might want to look to get more students from more diverse backgrounds who have the educational attainment for the institution. These allocations have dropped again. So I think before they were on 100 for large, 20 for medium, 10 for small, and they've dropped down. Most universities are not using their allocation at all. Some universities use more than this, and some universities already use more than their current allocation, and they buy additional licenses. If you feel that you're in one of those institutions, just drop me an email and we can talk about what that means for you and the implications. But again, they get access to ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Pro, all of the extensions, Enterprise, Hub Premium, all of the stuff that's really quite useful. What you will notice though is this second row here, the mobile users. Now, we've added in mobile users. So if you think about the way that you deploy apps across a university, you've got somebody who creates the app, and then maybe you have a lot of asset inspectors going out or work teams going out and looking at faults. You would deploy a mobile user for that. So that's an addition to the current license. and it will allow you to, effectively, you've got 120 users in the large institution, and you've got 60 in the medium, and you've got 25 in the small. Rarely do you need 100 Pro pluses. The estates team aren't all going to be using ArcGIS Pro. A handful will be, but most people will be recording information on a mobile device whilst they're out and about on the university campus, which flows into a central repository of information managed by some of these Pro Plus users. So I think it still fits the needs of many universities, but rather than giving absolutely everybody a Pro Plus license, we're now going to be able to give an appropriate license to a user for the tasks that they've been set. Oh, well, I've got through that bit. So I'm now going to think about some of the implications and the considerations given the new allocations. I'll give my voice a little bit of moisture before I go into it. So with less credits, that's probably the thing that you've picked up from the previous couple of slides. Esri is not going to be as generous with credits. What do we need to do? Well, with fewer credits, we need to think more carefully about what we do with legacy users and legacy users' data. So initial analysis across many of my customers' accounts, so you, the universities, the analysis shows that most of the credit use is from storage. So about 20% goes on actual analytics in ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro, where it consumes web-based analytical services. But 80% is on the storage of stuff in ArcGIS Online. When you dig into that storage, 80% of that storage is probably from users that no longer are part of the institution. Now, we know that we have to retain students' information if they've submitted work for a degree for a period of time to allow external verification of their degree. But we don't have to do it indefinitely, and it has to be, the deletion of those users and their data has to be in accordance with your data retention policy. So let's have a look at a practical example of this, which might be useful. So here's a university. This is a dashboard that I have access to. You have access to a slightly different version of this through ArcGIS Online. And here we can see the white line is 2023, the orange 2024, and the blue is 2025. And there's a gradual uptick in storage, or sorry, there's an uptick in the use of credits. This university is using 59,000 credits a month. Great, okay. How are they using these credits? Where are the credits being consumed? If we look at this table, we can now see that most of the credits are being used in storage. So I don't have my mouse highlighter on, but you can see this third row down is feature services, and it's about 650,000 credits over the 3 years. Oh no, actually, yeah, in total, yeah. But when we come down to spatial analysis, we're at 332. So I said 80-20. This is about 98 to 2. So most of this customer's credit consumption is on storage. The question is, how much of the storage is data that they actually need to retain, and how much is from legacy users which have left? Now, I know the university in question. I know that they have SSO enabled, and they have done for many years. And part of the beauty of SSO is that it allows you to have frictionless access to our software. One of the drawbacks is that when the user leaves, the access is truncated to their ArcGIS Online account. They no longer have access to the licenses. That's really good from a license compliance point of view, but there isn't a sort of a delete command through to ArcGIS Online, so their data will remain there in their user account forever. And that's what we need to get on top of. So let's break down a little bit more. So this is actually the feature services, and you can see from 2023 to 2025, it's practically doubled. And they have had some dips, so somebody has deleted something at some point, but generally the trend is going up. This is the data storage, so the stuff that isn't feature services, it's pretty static. So it's mainly feature services. So how are we going to do the spring cleaning? And it's a good question. ArcGIS Online has some ways for you to identify very big things, and it has some ways for you to identify stuff that hasn't been looked at for a period of time. But I've tried to use them to try and give you best practice, and it's quite difficult to find users on bulk, and it's quite difficult to delete their data. So we had we had a very bright graduate pass through our graduate scheme, and I gave them a set of questions and said, could you investigate using the Python API whether or not we can identify users that haven't logged in for a period of months, data that is private and big, data that is called test, final V1, these kind of things. And the grad went off and he built this, which is an experience builder, which kind of uses the Python API in the background to identify these things. And it can dump out a CSV, and then you could email the users and say, hey, you've got some big stuff. Now, I'm not going to run this tool. I ran one of the tools this morning, and it took a long time. And that was their findings from this experiment. Hey, I can do everything that you've asked, Addy, but my God, it's slow. How can we make it quicker? And that's something that we're investigating at the moment with our tech team and also with Esri Inc. But the output looks like this. So this is my account, and these are the big things that I hold in my account. And it reports them, and I could dump this out as a CSV. Now, the interesting thing that the grad did was that they calculated the number of credits that it's consuming and also the carbon. The carbon's quite an interesting thing because we're not, by not deleting content, we're keeping the lights on that data beyond a reasonable time that we need it, which costs electricity, and that electricity has an impact on the environment. So the grad calculated how much it costs in carbon to store data in Azure and AWS. And I thought it was quite an interesting way to look at it. So this is the annual carbon in grams. So some of them are, I think this one here, this big compact tile package is 8 kilograms. Am I doing my maths right on that? But you can see the carbon. The question is, do I need this data? So we're investigating these tools, and we're happy to show you them. And maybe once we've got a bit more confidence and they're speeded up a little bit, we can then work with you to do an audit on your account and help you reduce some of the legacy users and data in a safe way. Get rid of the stuff that you definitely don't need to keep from the users that don't have access and haven't had access for 2 or 3 years. Get rid of all of that. Say where we are as a baseline. Look at the slightly more complicated tasks. Clear those out. More complicated and more complicated. And that's the way that we're going to have to approach it. And I think that's one of the big tasks that we as a community need to do over the next 9 or 10 months, and that Esri UK needs to support you with. So, how long did that take me? Not too long. I'm going to give my voice a nice break now, and I'm going to pass you over to Sam. Sam's going to take you through some of the cool things in ArcGIS. Sam, do you want to share screen?
Brilliant,
I'll
thanks,
stop
Addy. Yeah,
sharing.
let me just share my screen.
I'll give you a thumbs up and an audible hooray, we can see it.
Brilliant, thank you. So yeah, thanks, Addy, for taking us through that. So as we all know, obviously in ArcGIS, things are always kind of evolving and improving. So what I wanted to run through today was kind of our top tips for how you can stay up to date with everything that is changing in ArcGIS. So the first thing I just wanted to mention was GIST. So if you're not signed up to GIST already, I highly recommend that you do. And what I'll do is I'll kind of run through these briefly and then I'll dive into them in a bit more detail in a second. But GIST is our monthly webinar and newsletter. So you can sign up and you'll get a monthly email which has lots of information about our upcoming events, any updates, any kind of upcoming learning sessions as well. So it's a really good place to kind of to get started with sort of seeing what's going on in ArcGIS. The other part of GIST is the webinars. So if you go into our page, you can see here we've got our technology webinars. So this actually gives you access to all of the past webinars that have happened, but also the ones that are upcoming as well. So you can see here that our next webinar is actually happening this Thursday, the 23rd at 11. So this is all on unlocking the power of spatial analysis in ArcGIS. It's also worth noting that we do have our winter update coming this Wednesday. So that'll be happening on the 22nd overnight. And what usually happens after that is there will be a winter update webinar. So I'll kind of cover a few things today in terms of what's new within the last 12 months, but these update webinars are a really, really good place to go. Once there's been an update, you can join those webinars and see everything that is new and improved in those. And also, if you kind of register, you'll get a link. You can get the recording, and if you didn't get to join the live session, you can always go back into the website, click onto the session that you're interested in, and you just have to fill in a few details on a form, and then you'll be able to have access to the session. The other thing that I just wanted to flag as well is our in-person events. So we obviously have our annual conference down in London. We recently had our Scottish conference up in Edinburgh. And the next one is we've got our Esri UK Welsh conference. So registrations are still open for this. So if this is in nearby, if you're based in Wales or maybe perhaps Northwest England, this is a really good chance for you to get some more information about what's going on in ArcGIS. So I'm just going to move into my browser just so that we can look at this in a bit more detail. So I mentioned GIS, so this is the GIS website. So this is where you can come in and you can sign up to receive the newsletter. Just to mention as well, all of the links to everything that I'm going to show you today are included in the PowerPoint slides. So when we send that out, you'll be able to come back in and access those through the slides. So just to kind of give you a bit of an idea about what this looks like. So this is the monthly newsletter. So this is what you'll receive via email. So you can see it's got the latest information about the upcoming webinars. It's got some more information about the in-person events and also information about upcoming updates and new releases as well. So just to kind of show you now how you can access all of this information in our events page. So this has everything on it. So it's got the window into the in-person events, the industry webinars, and then those technology webinars that I mentioned before. So again, here you can come in, you can see our upcoming conferences. Already we've got the date set for our annual conference next year. And you can come down as well and see all of those past events that we've hosted as well. And if I just move over to the technology webinars, you can see here that if I scroll down, from here, you can access all of those previous sessions that have happened. Maybe one to flag here in the spirit of spring cleaning, there was a really good session on effectively managing your ArcGIS Online account. So I definitely recommend that one. And again here, if you are interested in attending the Welsh conference, you can come in and register. And also we've posted up the agenda as well for you to have a look and see what will be happening on the day. So I'm just going to move back to my slides. So I've mentioned GIST and our webinars. The other kind of really good place to go to see what is kind of new in ArcGIS is the blogs. So hopefully you've seen this before, but if not, that's absolutely fine. I'll run you through kind of the highlights of the blog and kind of how you can use it and what it's for. So I think the blog's great because it splits all of these posts up into different topics. So perhaps you're interested in enterprise, you can kind of do a direct filter into all of the enterprise related blogs. Perhaps you're interested in just ArcGIS Online. There's a topic for that as well. And the blogs kind of, they cover a whole host of things. So everything from improving how you can use ArcGIS. It's got blog posts about all the new features that are coming out. There's information about how you can improve design and accessibility. And also there's blog posts about new data that is coming out on the Living Atlas. So I've kind of picked a few interesting ones out here. And as I mentioned, you'll be able to access all of the links here when we send over these slides to you all. But just these ones here. So this is kind of an example of some ArcGIS Online blogs. So this is about kind of improving the functionality that is already there within ArcGIS Online. So there's some really good articles here on pop-ups. So it's all about how you can integrate images into your pop-ups, improving charts, and then also improving those text elements. So this one ranges from kind of just basic using the text elements all the way up to using Arcade and HTML to kind of improve the visuals on your pop-ups as well. Some other interesting ones that I picked out as well. So there's one here about some improvements in ArcGIS Online. So this is covering kind of what's improved in editing in the map viewer. I mentioned about some blogs pertaining to kind of design and improving accessibility. So we picked this one here, which is really good about designing maps, thinking about some of that accessibility, particularly colorblind. And also I mentioned about data. So there's always blog posts whenever there's a new data set in the Living Atlas. There's usually an accompanying blog post. So there's a couple here as well that I picked out that I thought would be of interest. So again, I'll dive into this in a bit more detail in a second, but there's a whole host of new data that's been added this year, from new radon layers, improved LiDAR data. There's lots of enhanced 3D data in there as well. We've got the Sentinel-2 Explorer, and there's some new and improved national highways data in there as well. So I'll just go back to my browser. So this is kind of the window into the blogs. So this is kind of just the generic blog page. So you can find everything that you might be interested in from here. So I mentioned those topics. So these are kind of the key topics at the top. But if you click here, there's a whole host of other topics as well, so that you can dive into the area that is of interest to you. So just to kind of show you what this looks like, if you've never seen any of the blog posts before, this is one of the pop-up blog posts that I showed you earlier. So there's usually loads of really useful links, videos, kind of quick walkthroughs on kind of what it is that they're trying to show you. And then, yeah, if you want some more information at the bottom as well, there's usually somewhere they kind of link out to other useful, relevant blogs too. So again, just to kind of show you what the format of these usually is, I think this one has some videos. Yeah, so it's kind of showing you what that looks like and kind of guiding you through step by step how to implement those functionalities. So I also mentioned about new data. So within the blog, you can go directly to the ArcGIS Living Atlas articles. So this is all of the articles related to new data. So yeah, this has loads of stuff in it. So one I mentioned earlier about new LiDAR coverage in world elevation areas. So yeah, if you are kind of looking for new and improved data sets that are available directly in ArcGIS Online to kind of help automate your workflows, then I think this is a really good place to start. So the final thing that I just kind of wanted to show you is, obviously we're all aware that AI is very much a part of our day-to-day lives. So this is a story map that a colleague from Esri Inc. put together, and it's really useful because it summarizes sort of all of the different types of AI that you can use within ArcGIS, and it also gives sort of a rundown of how you can use that in each of the different tools that it's available. And then it also links out to our trust website. So if you have any questions around kind of how the data is used, you can navigate over to the trust website. And there's some really useful links here to get a bit more information. But yeah, I won't kind of dive into this in too much detail because again, the link is in the slides. But I think if you are interested in AI, it gives you information on kind of which release phase the tool is. So for ArcGIS Pro, this one's in private beta. So if that's something that you're interested in testing out, you can apply for early access to get your hands on that tool and what it's doing. We've got AI Assistant in Survey 123. We also have the AI Assistant in Story Maps now. And then if you scroll along, in addition to the generative AI, there's also all of the geo AI tools as well. So you can click through here and learn a bit more about how you can use that within ArcGIS. Brilliant. So I'll just move back to my slides. And then Addy, I think I will be handing back to you. Hopefully you're still there, Addy.
No, I've run away. You've got to do the rest of it, Sam. Can you see my screen now?
We can see your screen.
Oh, I've been gargling salt water. Got enough voice for the next half an hour. I don't know what's going wrong. I've been fine until my calendar said webinar, and then the voice decided to disappear a little bit. But thanks very much, Sam. That was super useful. I'm really interested in the AI stuff. I think GIS is still a complicated application to get your head around. The documentation that Esri provides is often flipping amazing if you can find it. And I think that AI assistants are really going to help educators to get their students to the right information faster. That's my thought. Sam, do you nod? Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess my absolute favorite is the new Arcade Assistant. So if you've never touched Arcade before, it honestly it feels like magic. So I definitely
Well,
recommend trying that.
if it makes old thick people feel more intelligent by actually getting code to run and not barf an error, then I'm all for that. But anyway, right, if we can see my screen, I'm going to crack on, and we've got some really good questions coming in. If you have got other questions, please stick them into Slido. A reminder, www.slido.com, and then the code is hashtag Esri2110, and that will get you into the question portal. CPD for lecturers. We have run, well, we actually had a request. A couple of lecturers tried to get onto our amazing teacher training sessions and got booted off them because it's not for them. It's very much geared to school teachers. But that they then came back and were like, well, where do we get any CPD? And it was a really good question. And we worked with a lecturer to put together some CPD for lecturers. Why do lecturers need CPD in GIS? Not all of them are GIS experts. Often they're doing GIS because they have done GIS, but it is part of their research. It isn't their research. And actually, I think Sam would also echo, it's really hard for us that work in Esri UK to keep up to date with everything. And we work here. So how do you do it if it is not your entire day job? So we put together um, a set of resources on how you could use some of the newer stuff in ArcGIS, mainly ArcGIS Online, within an example of a level 4 course, so level 4 being first years. And we piloted that with the RGS in September this year. Quite a small cohort. That was amazing because we had tried to put way too much into the course for a whole day. But we want to run it again and slim it down and see what people think. And then lecturers will see what they can do and they can then pick and choose certain elements to inject into their courses where it's appropriate, and just have a big roundtable discussion on what's going to make a learner's journey through university more exciting and easier where GIS and geospatial is involved. We're going to circulate a little form in the follow-up email to this webinar. If you are interested in coming along to one, please fill it in. It's going to indicate what months are best. If you're not the person, but you know who might be, or you can put it into a place where the correct people might see it, we would really appreciate you doing that. They're all going to be free. It's going to be the education team coming out and trying to do it in a centralized place. So one in London, maybe one in the southwest, one in the north of England, one in Scotland, one in Ireland, one in Northern Ireland. Who knows? If you want it, we'll run it. If you don't want it, we won't. So these webinars, we're happy to put on, but we want them to be useful for you, the attendees. And the question really is, what do you want in them and how often do you want to have them? So some thoughts and ideas from my head, probably a follow-up and more of a discussion about these changes that are coming in the license agreement. Probably a discussion and more demos on how you, the license administrator, might be able to look for big, weighty data sets consuming lots of credits in your account and how to deal with deprecated users. Maybe single sign-on again. Maybe this is the motivation to move you towards single sign-on. Maybe it isn't. We ran last year a couple of really good sessions. I'm biased because I didn't do one of them. That's why it was good. On single sign-on, where we got one of our technical experts to come in and run a call and then do a Q&A session on how to implement single sign-on. Damien did a grand job, and I'm sure he'd be willing to come in and do another one if you want it. Maybe we would do one on teaching and research. So aligned with that CPD course, we could maybe do something on that. I think, as Sam said, what we probably won't do is stuff that is already happening in the wider Esri UK ecosphere of webinars and newsletters. If that's covered off, that general what's new is covered off there, those are the people best equipped to give you that message. And that leaves us free to focus on the nuances of this sector and better support you that way. So we'll circulate another form in the follow-up email, which we'd like your input on what the next webinars should be about and how frequently do you want them. Also, online gives us access to quite a lot of you. Doing it in person, I think it's got some real benefits, but it's expensive and it takes you away for probably a whole day, and there's costs that need covered and possibly overnights. And we know that the sector's not awash with money at the moment. So maybe online is the best way to hit most of you most effectively, both in terms of time and expenses. But tell us and we'll respond to it as best we can. And that brings us to questions with about 20 minutes left. So let's see what we can do with the questions. Right, there's still time to ask questions. Hopefully, oh, well, that's not so superb. I thought I could share the questions into my screen. Let me unshare my screen and reshare my screen, and then hopefully you're not all seeing, you're just seeing the slide saying questions at the moment. I've moved another browser into that space and it's not picking it up. So let me just unshare, reshare. Come on, share button. Entire screen, that's why. Oh, I fluffed it at the last minute when I was sharing last time. It's good when you realize your mistake in real time in front of 50 odd people. Right, let's get into these questions. Top question by Anonymous. I love it. Everybody's anonymous today, and that's fine. How many AGOL organizational sites are allocated for the large institution as part of the new agreement? Does a new site get spun up in the EU? Sneaky, two questions in one. Um, the answer to the first question is more than one. I haven't had the exact number. I think it was nominally 5 before, and it will be between 1 and 5 going forward, but I will get clarification on that from Esri Inc. They haven't finalized the entire deal, which is slightly awkward when you're running a webinar, trying to give you, the audience, the best information. But we've cracked on and we've got kind of the metadata. We haven't got all of the details. So I will take that back to them, and perhaps by the time I send out the follow-up email, I will include the answer. Does the new site get spun up in the EU? Yes, if you want it. So by default, if I'm requesting a new site for an EU customer or a UK customer, I will request it as an EU node. It's just easier, isn't it? We all know that. We know why we're doing it. We don't need to go over that. But if you want an EU node, you can. If you're moving to SSO and you're on a US node and you think this is the time to get an EU one, just request a new EU node and we'll do SSO in that one going forward. Right, question number 2. So let's go. Oh, I'm going to ask Jenny. We save all of the questions after this, otherwise I'm going to have to remember them, but I can watch the recording back, so it's no biggie. How do JISC bands map to small, medium, large licensees in the allocation groups? Well, the old way was 1 and 2 were in large, 3, 4, 5, and 5B were in medium, 6 to 10 were in small. JISC have moved their bands around a wee bit. It'll be broadly that, or very, very similar. It's not going to change massively, but it was 1 and 2 in large, 3 to 5B in medium, 6 to 10 in small. And we'll probably confirm that pretty soon as well. Let's move that one over here. How do JISC bands, we've done that one. How do you purchase new credits and how much does it cost? Well, you can order them on the JISC website and the cost will be determined in the next few months. Again, Esri Inc. have to tell us how much they're charging for them, and then we have to tell you how much we're charging for them. But you can order them at the moment through the JISC website, and the intention is that you'll be able to request more through the JISC website in the future. But the cost is to be confirmed. Where we have multiple orgs, are the academic use limits for the institution as a whole across all orgs? If so, is there a way of splitting amongst other orgs? Yes, the allocation is across all of your organizations for academic use, and you determine the number of users that you want to go in each one. So for example, if you were on large, because that's the only one I can remember the allocation form off the top of my head, and you had 15,000, you could put 10,000 in your main teaching node, and then you could have a research node where you know there's only 50 people, and you could set it at 100 to give them a little bit of a buffer. And you could spin up that organization and say, I just want 100 in this, and it will give you credits accordingly. If you needed more credits in that organization, you add some more users in, you'll get some more credits, or you buy more credits for that organization. What I will say on that, and I realize I didn't have it in the slides, which is remiss of me, I think there's a good discussion to be had between differentiating between teaching use and research use in organizations. So the offer from Esri is still pretty generous, and the intention is really to facilitate teaching. Research, big research grants usually come with a dollop of cash, and part of that dollop of cash is often for cloud compute and storage. And we're part of that cloud compute and storage, but it hasn't been explicit where there's a charge for it. So if you start separating out teaching use from research use, so a lecturer might have 2 ArcGIS Online accounts within the institution. One is teaching, one is research. They can get a shed load of credits as part of their research grant, and they can pay that to get more credits in their research account to do research whilst protecting the teaching account for students. If that makes sense. And I'm encouraging, there's a couple of universities that have already made that transition because they know that they have large research grants which are going to use ArcGIS Online. And they also got a dollop of money and they're like, well, we'll buy more credits for it, but we need to separate the use. And also we don't want students in our research account, general students, that is, undergraduates. They're like, we don't want them, so we'll have them in a separate org and we'll have separate credits for it. So the short answer is, yeah, you can spread your users across multiple organizations. How do we purchase new credits? What's the cost? We've done that one, so I'll mark that as answered. Can you confirm departmental licenses will continue to be available in addition to the small? They will be, but we don't generally sell a departmental license to an organization that has a site license because you get multiple organizations. I don't see any benefit in it. We would make more money, but it doesn't seem honest. We sell you one license and then we'll sell you additional products. So you can't have a small site and a departmental license. Make sense? So departmental license will still be available if you don't want a site license, but if you have a site license, you don't get a departmental license because there really isn't any benefit. Mark that one as red. Do you have any videos on how to use credits and when credits are required for
Perhaps I can
non-ArcGIS users? Sorry,
Perhaps
go
I
on.
can jump in on this one, Addy. We've got some useful links. So there's some documentation on our website all about credits and kind of the costings associated with different workflows in ArcGIS Online. And there's also useful video links. So we'll send that out with the slides when we share those across.
Yeah, because our cloud is split between Azure and AWS, some data is more efficient in terms of its storage and some is less efficient in terms of its storage. So the credits get used in different ways and for different data formats. But yeah, we'll send that out. AI is off by default. Does Esri have any details for universities that are reluctant to embrace AI usage? We've got our trust site. I'll dig into that and we'll include the links. But you'll have hopefully a very clear AI use policy within your institution, and you should make sure that nothing that we do within ours by enabling that AI use would put you in hot water at an institutional level. So make sure that you're okay before you switch it on. But as Sam said, it can do some interesting stuff. It's not about harvesting your data and putting it into a general pool on the internet. It's about, a lot of it is about that assistant to help users be more efficient within what is a complicated software application and discipline. But make sure you're allowed to before you enable. Making that one red and that one red. Is there any information on AI use, underlying language models used, input? Yep. So pretty much what I said on the previous one, we'll include some links to better inform you. I think Sam and I would both put our hands up and say we ain't the AI experts, but we do have in Esri UK, we have an internal AI task force. So they're looking at what Esri Inc. is doing and they're trying to make white papers, which we can then pass on the relevant information to our customers, but it will be in the trust site, the Esri UK trust site as well. Can you provide updates on costs for the different site levels? It would be good to give our finance teams as much notice in this current climate. Yep, I can give you some bandings. I can't give you the exact price. I think you'll remember from previous years, we try and get that information out as close to the year end as possible, because we do appreciate that you have to do budgeting by January, February time. The costs last time went up by just over 10%. I think it was 11.25 or something. And realistically, we're looking at somewhere between 10 and 15%. That increase is in year one, but then it is flat for years 2 and years 3. So within a 3-year agreement, we fix the prices. So it goes up, it's flat, and then it goes up again for the next agreement. But we're looking at, yeah, budget between 10 and 15%. for the increase, and we'll thrash that out with Esri Inc., JISC, and the steering group, and make sure everybody's happy. But you will know that everything's got more expensive over the last 3 years, so we will have to increase slightly. Old SSO users, there are requests on storage for assessment. We use admin tools by GeoJob to delete. Yeah, 3 years not login and users. Yep. So I mean, everything's possible in GeoJob, and it is essentially running some Python scripts in the background, and you set up the variables and then you run it. Sam's got some experience of doing that in her previous life within Esri UK, and the tool that I showed you, the ArcGIS trawler, is using the same code in the background but a different interface to search, and also the tool doesn't cost. We can work with GeoJob to see what deal we can get for the academic sector if you want to go down that route. GeoJob's model, it gives you access to all of your nodes for a fee. So if you have got multiple organizations, you could manage them within that environment, but it's still not plug and play. And I have been nagging Esri Inc., I was trying to word this politely, nagging Esri Inc. for a number of years that their tools are not quite adequate for managing deprecated users and legacy data. And I will continue to do so. I'll share some more screen grabs of the ArcGIS trawler, because the questions, and I'll also put in the questions that we wanted to answer. And part of this discussion is, have I missed something that you would want to identify in your accounts? Because if I have, we can try and write it and put it into the tool. But yeah. Are Esri planning to implement user provisioning, deprovisioning, and single sign-on configuration using features like those that Microsoft Entra and other platforms provide? I don't know. I will go and seek advice from Damien and others about this. I think the way it's set up at the moment, like I'm not an SSO expert. You don't want to automatically delete things because if there's degree assessed work, you don't want to get rid of it. So having a delay is always good. But if you then have a tool within ArcGIS Online which says, say you have a data retention policy of 5 years, then if a user is inactive for 3 years, you can, or 2 years or 1 year, you can mark them as disabled and give them a specific role. And then if they've been in that role type for 4 years, which gives you your balance of 5 years, you can then delete them and all of their data. And if nobody has contacted you in 5 years to say, hey, I need to keep this data, then it's going. And yes, sometimes somebody will go, oh, I wish you hadn't deleted that. Well, you had 5 years, and you can do automatic email saying we're going to delete your account on this date. And if they don't get back to you, you've given them adequate warning and they haven't responded to any emails. I would like a system like that. But I don't have a magic wand. I just have a loud mouth and a keyboard. And I'll continue asking. But hopefully that answers that question in part. I'll get clarification from Damien on whether or not there will be any implementation of provisioning and deprovisioning in single sign-on, because I don't know. I'm going to approve the last 2 questions, and I'm going to mark that as read. GeoJob is free for this task. Yeah, GeoJob, the free one's pretty good. What I've found from my testing is that sometimes you need to run one tool to create a list to then put as the input, and you can't do that in GeoJob free, and you can't schedule tasks. And that's what the premium tool has, plus it has a couple of additional useful tools. Sam's used them probably more than I have. So, but I think the free does quite a lot. It can certainly find really big files and you can dump it out as a CSV, and then you can take the emails out of that and you can email the users and go, hey, these data sets are massive. Do you need them? And that might trigger people to be tidier. You know, nobody deletes anything off their hard drive until their hard drive says 95% full, and then you go into panic mode. We've got quite lazy with the amount of cloud storage and disk space that we have access to. Sam, you got anything to add on that?
No, I think you kind of covered everything. You're right, is that obviously you can get that, you can run GeoJube to get all of the information, but it's that actioning. So you need a separate tool to then set up the actions to then manage your content. I guess there's and cons of using both, either in a script in AGOL and then in GeoJobe as well. They're both doing similar things. But obviously have everything in AGOL as well. You have direct access to that content. So working from a CSV and then going back into AGOL to try and manage your content is not always the most efficient. So yeah.
And the final, not the final question, the penultimate question, maybe. Is there any update on offline use by user groups? Previously, it was on or off for the whole organization. So hopefully you understand that. Yeah, offline use allows people to take licenses off for an extended period of time, but it's a universal flag for your entire organization. And we have asked Esri Inc. to have it added into maybe a group or into a role type that you can add a different role type for offline use. And it hasn't managed to land with them as an urgent task, but we continue to lobby on your behalf. We think it would be good. I mean, you can take the software offline a little bit, but not indefinitely. So we will continue to ask for that functionality, but I don't have an update. Is there a way of messaging users on the system? Well, you can. I don't know. Can you? I don't think you can send messages out through ArcGIS Online, but you can get access to their email. Maybe you can send everything. So I'm not sure if
Y-
you can message through ArcGIS Online, but with
Not that I'm
certain
aware
people,
of.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
you
we,
can download user reports in ArcGIS Online, which will output loads of information about the user and then the emails as well.
yeah, and perhaps that's the focus of one of the future webinars is how to start to investigate your credit consumption and how to message users effectively where they've got large stuff, which is shared privately, um, and what to do in the considerations, because we could be here for an hour talking about it, and then we can do some demos and we can build some resources to support you following our workflows that we show in the webinar. And that's not too difficult for us to put together. What we do internally, I'm part of the AGOL steering group in Esri UK. We audit everybody's ArcGIS online organizations, and I get an email every month going, here are the top 10 data sets across all of the Esri UK organizations. And we are generally in there because we serve some large data sets out to the education community. And then I have to justify why that exists to our head of AGOL, and that's fine. And it's an automated process, and we can show you how that is put together if that's useful. And if it is, please do fill the forms in that we send you in the follow-up email. It'll probably be tomorrow before we put that together. I'll try and get some of the answers to some of the outstanding questions. But we're now at past, which is 58 minutes after we've started. If there are no further questions, thank you very much for your time. Most of you are still on the call, so you've not got too bored of Sam and I, which is great. And I will let you have a late lunch and get back to work. But we'll be in touch with a follow-up email, and you can fill in the two forms, what you want next, how often do you want it, and the CPD for lecturers. But with that, unless Sam's got anything else, nope. Thank you very
Nothing
much
from
for
me.
attending and have a good day.
Cheers,
Take care.
everyone.